In the vast council chamber of the Galactic Council, representatives from dozens of species exchanged shocked whispers. One of the longest-standing members of the council, a reptilian ambassador from a planet far on the outer rim, stood to address the assembly. The humans. Earth, he hissed, his voice full of disbelief. Impossible. The very idea is an affront to our collective wisdom. But the council's leader, an ancient being who had seen countless civilizations rise and fall, was not so quick to dismiss Earth's new classification. With a slow, deliberate motion, he raised his hand for silence. "Observe," he said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "It is not the power of their technology or the sophistication of their civilization that makes Earth dangerous, it is their will to survive. They endure. And that is something that cannot be ignored." Back on Earth, the world's leaders scrambled to respond. Many dismissed the news as an error, an overreaction, or a gross misunderstanding of human nature. But some, especially in the military, understood the gravity of the situation. They knew that this new classification could be the beginning of something far more dangerous than they could anticipate. Dr. Lynn Mitchell, a leading scientist in the Earth's Global Space Agency, was one of the few who believed that the classification held more truth than many were willing to admit. She'd studied Earth's ecosystem for years, witnessing firsthand the astonishing adaptability of life on the planet. From the most hostile deserts to the deepest oceans, life on Earth had a way of surviving, even thriving, in conditions that would have obliterated any other species. "Humans are the ultimate survivors," Dr. Mitchell said in a somber interview on a global broadcast. "We've survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and natural disasters. We've rebuilt, every time. And now, the galaxy has taken notice. This Deathworld classification, it's not just a warning. It's an invitation. The galaxy sees us as a challenge." At the same time, deep within the Galactic Council's archives, an alien observer, the one who had proposed Earth's classification, stood silently, watching through his holographic screen as Earth's response played out. His race had once witnessed a similar phenomenon, where an underdog world with no real technological advantage had taken the galaxy by surprise. But Earth was different. There was something unique about its people, something unpredictable, something that the galaxy would soon understand. The observer's thoughts lingered on Earth's future. He knew something the Council did not, a secret that would soon be revealed. Earth was not just a random planet caught in the struggle for survival. Earth was a test, a lesson, and an opportunity. And the humans had yet to realize it. As John sat back, his thoughts raced. His granddaughter's question still echoed in his mind. What made Earth a death world? Why had the galaxy decided that they were so dangerous? Could this be a mistake, or was it something that humans had yet to fully understand? One thing was clear, Earth's classification had just set the stage for a galactic shift, and humanity's place in the cosmos would never be the same again. And John, like so many others, was about to find out just how deep the mystery ran. The shock of Earth's classification as a Class 13 death world had barely begun to settle when the first signs of the impending galactic shift started to manifest. Across the planet, news outlets were flooded with questions, speculations, and conflicting opinions. Some believed Earth would face galactic sanctions, cut off from the rest of the universe in an isolation that felt both deserved and terrifying. Others feared that alien civilizations might turn their attention to Earth for more sinister reasons. The idea that the galaxy had started to take Earth seriously was a concept so alien, so overwhelming, that most of humanity couldn't fathom what it truly meant. In the immediate aftermath, Earth's governments scrambled to contain the panic. World leaders held emergency meetings, military forces were put on high alert, and top scientists were called in to review the galactic classification in detail. Dr. Lynn Mitchell, who had once argued in favor of Earth's resilience, now found herself at the forefront of a global debate. She was bombarded with questions about the implications of their new status, and while she spoke confidently about humanity's ability to adapt, something in her gut told her that Earth was on the verge of something far more complex than a mere political struggle. "Do you believe this classification will lead to war?" a reporter asked during an urgent televised briefing. Lynn paused, her mind racing through every scenario. "I don't think it will be a war. I think it's a test," she said, the words feeling heavier than she intended. "A test we haven't prepared for." Thousands of light-years away, on the outskirts of the galaxy, a vastly superior alien species watched Earth's reaction with great interest. The Zyril, a highly advanced race of beings whose intellect spanned centuries, had long been fascinated by humanity's seemingly boundless will to survive. But now, with Earth's sudden rise to prominence in galactic politics, they saw an opportunity to study human resilience up close. The Zyril had spent years observing countless civilizations. They had seen species rise and fall, many more intelligent and technologically advanced than humanity. But none had endured the way humans had. It was their persistence, their ability to rebuild from the ashes, that made them so unique. But now, with Earth's status as a Deathworld officially recognized, the Zyril decided it was time for the humans to be tested, not just by their surroundings, but by the very forces of the galaxy itself. At the Zyril High Command, an ominous decision was made. A team of elite operatives was dispatched, with a single mission, to bring humanity to the brink of extinction, not by violence, but by forcing them to confront the full scope of their own potential. To prove that, no matter how resilient they were still just pawns in the galaxy's larger game. Back on Earth, John, the retired military veteran, found himself pulled back into a life he thought he had left behind. He had been watching the unfolding events from the comfort of his home, but the gravity of the situation was now clear. The political instability caused by the Galactic Declaration had begun to seep into everyday life. People were panicking, not knowing if they would face invasion or worse. But then, something unexpected happened. A strange signal was intercepted by Earth's top scientists. It was faint at first, barely detectable among the thousands of communications flowing in and out of Earth's orbit. But soon, experts confirmed that it was a message that originated from deep within the galaxy, outside of Earth's known space. The message was short, cryptic, and chilling: "Test begins soon. Prepare yourselves." At first, there was no explanation. The world's governments reacted with confusion, with some dismissing it as a hoax, while others suspected it was a direct threat from one of the galactic powers. But the fear was palpable, especially as the message's origin point was traced back to a region of space known for its isolation, far beyond the reach of any known hostile force. John couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy was watching them now, not just observing, but preparing for something. And it terrified him. He knew Earth was no stranger to tough battles, but this felt different. This wasn't a war against an army or a disease, it was something far larger. Something that threatened humanity's very existence. As Lynn and the other scientific minds worked to decipher the cryptic message, they realized that it was more than just a warning, it was a signal that the galaxy had set a challenge in motion. Earth wasn't just being watched, it was being tested. But what would the test entail? And who would decide if humanity passed or failed? Across the globe, people started to prepare. Survivalists, military experts, and scientists all began to stockpile resources, fearing the worst. They had no idea what was coming, but they knew it was going to be unlike anything they had ever faced. John, as a former soldier, felt a deep, instinctual need to protect those around him. His country was gripped by uncertainty, but his own mind was clear. "Survive," he whispered, looking out the window toward the horizon. His experience told him that survival wasn't just about fighting or hiding, it was about understanding the terrain, knowing when to push forward and when to pull back. And right now, Earth's terrain was one of fear and confusion, but also a terrain that could be conquered. They had to be strong. Not just strong in the ways the galaxy might expect, but stronger in their own humanity, in their will to persist when all seemed lost. But John wasn't alone in his understanding. Across the world, millions were beginning to see the truth. This wasn't about battling alien invaders or dealing with galactic bureaucrats. This was about testing humanity's resilience. Earth's greatest strength lay not in its military might, but in the hearts and minds of its people. The tension was palpable. For weeks, humanity had been thrust into a state of near constant uncertainty. Governments scrambled, resources were stockpiled, and experts debated over what could be done to prepare for the unknown. The message from the galaxy still echoed in the minds of every citizen: test begins soon. Prepare yourselves. The question loomed large: what kind of test would Earth face, and more importantly, who would be the ones to pass it? As the days turned into weeks, strange phenomena began to occur. At first, it was subtle. Scientists reported odd gravitational shifts in various regions of Earth, while others noticed bizarre fluctuations in electromagnetic fields. Earth's atmosphere seemed to hum with an unnatural energy, as though something far beyond their understanding was beginning to influence their world. Dr. Lynn Mitchell, the scientist who had first sounded the alarm, had a sinking feeling in her gut. She had spent countless hours poring over research, trying to find patterns in the strange events unfolding on Earth, but so far, no answers had emerged. And then, in the blink of an eye, everything changed. It started with a massive storm. Unlike any Earth had ever seen, it tore through cities with a speed and ferocity that left entire regions devastated. The storm, which had originated in the Pacific, surged across continents, its ferocity increasing as it moved. It was as if nature itself had become a weapon, and the planet was the target. But then, something even stranger happened. In the midst of the chaos, a massive, glowing object appeared in Earth's orbit. It wasn't a ship or a weapon. It was a massive sphere, pulsing with an ethereal energy that seemed to defy the laws of physics. It hovered silently above the planet, casting a strange, almost hypnotic glow across the Earth below. The world watched in awe and terror as the sphere remained stationary in the sky, as if it were waiting for something. For the first time, people realized that Earth wasn't just a test for the galaxy, it was part of something much larger. The sphere was the beginning of a challenge unlike any humanity had ever faced. John, sitting in his small cabin outside a rural town, stared up at the sky. He had been monitoring the news, but when the sphere appeared, the entire world had been thrown into chaos. The storm, the strange object, none of it made sense. But what struck him the hardest was the fear that had begun to seep into the hearts of those around him. People were no longer just worried about what might happen, they were terrified of the unknown. But John wasn't afraid. He had lived through too much in his time as a soldier to let fear dictate his actions. He knew that humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to adapt, to face adversity head-on and overcome it. As the sphere continued to hover in the sky, John made a decision. He had to act, not just for himself, but for the people around him. If Earth was going to survive whatever this was, they needed someone who believed in their strength. They needed a leader. Meanwhile, Lynn and her team at the Global Research Facility were working tirelessly to understand the mysterious energy emanating from the sphere. They were no closer to finding answers, but Lynn's mind raced. The storm that had ravaged the world seemed to have been a prelude, a test of humanity's ability to survive natural disasters. But the sphere was something entirely different. It was as if Earth had been thrust into a new reality, one where the very laws of nature no longer applied. The question was no longer why this was happening, but what it meant. And Lynn knew that the answer was just beyond their reach. As the days passed, the global tension only grew. The weather patterns had become erratic, with storms breaking out in unexpected places and natural disasters becoming more frequent. Earth had always faced challenges, but now it seemed as if the planet itself was being reshaped by forces beyond their understanding. Lynn's research had led her to a chilling conclusion: the galaxy wasn't just testing Earth. It was reshaping it. And whatever was coming next was far worse than anything they could have imagined. John, now more determined than ever, began to rally those around him. He knew that humanity's greatest strength lay not in their technology or their ability to fight, but in their will to survive. He wasn't just preparing for a fight. He was preparing for a test of the human spirit itself. Meanwhile, in the shadows, the Zyril watched. The test had begun. They had been observing Earth for centuries, waiting for the right moment to test humanity's resolve. They had seen civilizations rise and fall, but none had the potential of Earth. The humans, in their stubbornness, had a power that was unique, a power that could tip the scales of the galaxy. And now, the Zyril had decided to see if humanity could rise to the occasion. Twist, as Earth struggled to cope with the new reality, Lynn and John began to uncover a terrifying truth. The sphere, the storms, and the natural disasters were not random events. They were challenges designed to break humanity, physically, emotionally, and mentally. But what the Zyril hadn't anticipated was the unyielding strength of human perseverance. The more Earth was pushed, the more its people rose to meet the challenge. And the real test had only just begun. The world was teetering on the brink. John knew that the next step would determine whether humanity would be broken or whether they would prove to the galaxy that their strength was more than just survival, it was the resilience of the human spirit. The question now was simple: could they pass the test? As the days turned into weeks, the challenges humanity faced grew more intense. The storms, though frequent, were now accompanied by strange occurrences. People began reporting bizarre phenomena: animals acting erratically, crops wilting overnight, entire cities plunged into silence as their power grids failed without warning. Earth seemed to be at war with itself. But it was the sphere in the sky that held humanity's attention. No longer just a passive observer, it had started to emit pulses of energy, as though it was scanning the planet. Each pulse was followed by a sudden, localized disaster. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, massive tidal waves, the planet seemed to be undergoing an apocalyptic transformation. The world was in chaos, but amidst the suffering, a quiet resistance was forming. In every corner of the globe, people were coming together. Governments faltered, but grassroots movements grew in strength. Leaders emerged, ordinary men and women who understood the core of humanity's resilience. And John, the once solitary man from the rural town, found himself at the forefront of this revolution. In a small command center deep within the heart of the United States, Lynn stared at a holographic display of the sphere. She had been working non-stop, trying to decipher the data they had been gathering on the energy pulses. Something was changing, she could feel it in the very air. The atmosphere was charged, crackling with a sense of impending doom. Lynn was no longer just a scientist. She was a symbol of hope to the rest of humanity. Her discoveries had confirmed what many had feared: the sphere was not merely observing Earth. It was actively manipulating the planet's environment. This was no longer just a test, it was an execution, and Earth was being slowly ground down. But Lynn held on to a thread of belief. She had seen humanity's strength in action, in the small communities that had banded together, helping each other survive the constant onslaught. What the Zyril didn't understand was that humans didn't just survive, they adapted. And that adaptability, Lynn believed, was the key to their salvation. John had spent the past few days traveling, speaking with leaders from different countries, urging them to unite. The global response had been fractured at best, but there was a fire in humanity that couldn't be extinguished. In the face of the worst calamities, people had not given up. They were fighting back in the only way they knew how, together. The storm in the Pacific had destroyed entire coastal cities, but John found survivors. A mother and her children, stranded and desperate, but still fighting. An elderly couple, having lost everything, but still holding on to the memories of a life lived together. Their stories were not unique, but they were powerful. And John realized that this was the key: the people of Earth weren't defined by their resources, their governments, or their technology. They were defined by their resolve to never give up. But not all was as it seemed. While John was rallying the survivors and Lynn was deep in her research, a new threat emerged. It wasn't just the storm, the energy pulses, or the earthquakes. It was a strange, almost intangible presence, a force that seemed to be manipulating the very fabric of reality itself. John felt it first. It was late one night as he sat with a group of survivors around a fire. The sky above was unusually dark, the air thick with tension. Then, without warning, the ground beneath them trembled. It wasn't a traditional earthquake, but something different. The ground warped and shifted, as though the very laws of physics were being bent. Then, it happened. A figure appeared from the shadows, its form blurred, like a mirage. At first, they thought it was a hallucination. But no, it was real. A figure in dark armor, its face hidden behind a visor. The figure spoke in a voice that was both distant and close, as if it echoed in their minds rather than their ears. "You think you can resist?" the figure asked. "You have no idea what you are up against." The group froze. John's instincts kicked in, and he reached for his weapon, but the figure's presence was overwhelming, suffocating. This was no ordinary soldier or enemy. This was something far greater. Lynn, back in the command center, was working furiously to decrypt the data from the latest energy pulses. Her screen flickered, and for a moment, she saw the same figure that John had encountered. Her heart skipped a beat. This was not a part of the test. This was something else. The next few hours were filled with confusion and chaos. The mysterious figure, though silent after its initial words, had triggered something deep within Earth's psyche. People began to panic. Governments, already fragile from the storms, began to crumble. Communication lines failed as if Earth itself was turning against them. But then, in the midst of the chaos, John realized something profound. The figure, though terrifying, had not attacked. It had simply spoken one sentence, then disappeared. It was a message, a challenge, perhaps. This was a test of humanity's spirit, yes, but it was also a test of what lay within each individual's heart. Fear, or courage. Despair, or hope. The next steps were crucial. Earth was facing an enemy far beyond its comprehension, but John knew one thing: humanity was not alone in this fight. The answer lay not in defeating the storm or the sphere, but in overcoming the forces within. Twist. As John led a group of survivors to confront the strange figure, he made an unexpected discovery. The figure was not from the Zyril, it was a human, a lost survivor from the early days of Earth's trial, someone who had succumbed to the overwhelming forces of the test. This individual had become something else, someone who had been twisted by the very trials they were now facing. And this twisted survivor was not the last. Earth had seen trials before, thousands of years of struggle, wars, and survival. But this trial was unlike any other. The reckoning had begun, but John wasn't going to back down. Earth had faced worse, and humanity had always found a way to rise. This would be no different. The battle for Earth's future had only just begun. The days blurred together as Earth's transformation continued to accelerate. Earthquakes, storms, and waves of unexplainable energy had become so frequent that people no longer counted the days by the calendar, but by the number of events. Humanity, battered and weary, clung to the hope that the mysterious figure, now believed to be a twisted version of a human, could offer them some insight. John, now more determined than ever, had been leading a team through the shattered remnants of cities to uncover the truth behind the events. But each day brought more challenges. The mysterious figure, once a mere symbol of dread, had become an enigma. Was it a warning? A sign of something darker? Or was it an ally, one who could help humanity survive? Lynn, meanwhile, had uncovered a chilling detail in her research. The pulses of energy from the sphere seemed to have a consistent pattern. They weren't random. No, these pulses were deliberate, timed, and they targeted specific locations with frightening precision. The earthquakes, the storms, even the very changes in the atmosphere, they all correlated to the sphere's actions. This was no mere natural disaster, it was engineered. In a moment of clarity, Lin understood the full scope of the sphere's power. It wasn't just manipulating the weather. It was rewriting the rules of reality itself. Everything, time, space, even gravity, could be altered with a thought. Humanity was facing something far beyond their ability to understand. Her discovery was both terrifying and empowering. The key to defeating this enemy lay in understanding it, but how could anyone truly understand something that didn't obey the laws of nature? How could anyone fight an enemy that could twist reality to its will? John had gathered a ragtag team of survivors who, though skeptical at first, now trusted him implicitly. Together, they made their way across the fractured land, headed for the location where the mysterious figure had first appeared. They had to find answers. But as they approached the site, they were met with something unexpected. The very landscape seemed to shift before their eyes. What had once been a barren wasteland now resembled a jungle, thick with vegetation and strange creatures that seemed to appear and disappear at will. Time seemed to distort here. Hours passed in what felt like minutes. John's mind raced. The presence of the figure, the twisted survivor, wasn't just a personal challenge. It was a key to understanding the nature of the changes happening to Earth. It was becoming clear that Earth was undergoing a metamorphosis, an evolution, albeit a painful one. Something deeper than just survival was at stake. "Stay close," John ordered his group, his voice tense but determined. "Whatever this place is, we need to stay sharp." The team trekked further into the jungle, their eyes wide as they noticed the changes. It was as if reality itself were bending. Trees grew at unnatural angles, and the ground rippled like water. The air buzzed with an unexplainable energy, a force that made every step feel like they were walking on the edge of something vast and powerful. Suddenly, the figure appeared again, its form shimmering as though the very laws of physics couldn't contain it. This time, it didn't speak, but a sense of pressure grew in the air, almost as if the figure was reading their minds. It wasn't just observing, it was probing, searching for weaknesses, for cracks in their resolve. "What do you want from us?" John demanded, stepping forward, his voice shaky but full of defiance. The figure remained silent, but John's heart skipped a beat as a voice echoed in his mind. "You want to understand? Then understand this: you are not alone in your struggle. The universe is full of worlds in torment, and every species must choose. Adapt or perish." The voice was not one of cruelty, but one of cold inevitability. The figure's presence was not an enemy to fight, but a challenge to overcome. Humanity, as it stood, was too weak to survive. But if they could adapt, if they could rise to the occasion, they might have a chance. John felt his blood run cold. This wasn't just about saving Earth. This was about something far greater, a cosmic test of survival, one that had been going on for millennia. And Earth had just been chosen as the latest battleground. Back at the command center, Lin worked tirelessly to correlate the data from the pulses with the strange occurrences. Something in the data patterns clicked. She realized that the sphere was not just a passive observer. It was a test. A trial, one that had been conducted on countless other worlds, but with one critical difference: Earth's test was more advanced, more complex, and more personal. Lin's discovery sent chills down her spine. If Earth was a Class 13 Deathworld, then the changes they were experiencing were part of something far bigger than they had imagined. The sphere wasn't just manipulating weather or reality, it was orchestrating a grand experiment. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival, they were being judged by something beyond their comprehension. And if they failed, Earth would be erased, just like so many other planets before it. The group continued their trek through the shifting jungle, every step leading them deeper into the unknown. The figure followed them at a distance, always just out of sight, but always present. It was clear now that it wasn't a physical adversary, but a force of nature in its own right. John, growing ever more determined, addressed his team. "We have to keep going. Earth isn't just facing a disaster. It's facing a choice, to rise or to fall. But I believe in humanity. I believe we can do this." The survivors nodded, their faces grim but resolute. They didn't know if they were heading toward salvation or doom, but they were united in their will to fight for their future. The next step would determine everything. Twist, just as they reached the center of the jungle, where the figure's presence was strongest, the ground began to shake once more. But this time, it was different. A voice echoed in the air, not from the figure, but from deep within the earth itself. "Are you ready to make your choice?" This wasn't just a test of survival anymore. It was a test of humanity's heart, its spirit, and its willingness to adapt and evolve. The decision had to be made. Would humanity fight the changes and bend the world to their will? Or would they accept the inevitable and adapt to the new reality? The air crackled with tension as the ground beneath them rumbled again. The voice, deep and resonant, seemed to emanate not just from the earth but from the very fabric of reality itself. It was a voice without warmth or malice, just the cold, indifferent tone of inevitability. "Are you ready to make your choice?" John and his team stood frozen, their breaths shallow, hearts pounding in their chests. This moment had been coming for a long time. The shifting landscape around them, the mysterious figure, the natural disasters, they had all led to this point. But what choice was there? How could they, ordinary people, stand against something so immense? "We have no choice," John whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. "We either adapt, or we perish." The voice, still echoing in their minds, responded. "Your species has always fought to survive. But survival is not enough. You must evolve, adapt to the new world you face. Only then will you be worthy to continue." There was a weight to these words, like the pressure of an immense force bearing down on their very existence. It wasn't just about finding a way to save Earth, it was about changing humanity's very understanding of what it meant to live. The team looked around, and for the first time, the full gravity of their situation hit them. Earth was no longer the world they knew. It was no longer a planet governed by familiar rules. It had become something else, something alien, something that demanded a new kind of strength, one they hadn't yet discovered. Lynn, who had been studying the pulse patterns from the sphere with obsessive focus, spoke up, her voice tinged with a mix of awe and fear. "What if the changes are part of something bigger? What if we're not just facing a catastrophe, but being given a chance to evolve, to become something greater?" Her words hung in the air, and for the first time, the team seemed to grasp the full scope of their struggle. The planet was changing, yes, but so was humanity. It wasn't a question of just surviving the next storm or earthquake. It was about surviving as something new. Something more than human. And as if on cue, the figure materialized once again, its presence palpable but not overwhelming. It was no longer a distant force. It was here, with them, in the heart of the jungle, its energy radiating in waves that made their skin prickle. It stood silently, waiting. "Why are you showing us this?" John asked, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "What do you want from us?" The figure didn't respond immediately. Instead, the ground beneath their feet shifted again, and the trees around them began to twist in impossible directions. Time seemed to warp, and suddenly, it was as if the group was standing at the center of an infinite expanse. They were no longer in the jungle. They were somewhere else, a place that felt outside of time, outside of everything they knew. The voice came again, this time from all directions. "Humanity has always been a paradox. You are capable of great destruction, yes, but also great creation. You can tear down entire worlds, yet you can build them again. You destroy, but you also heal. It is in your nature to evolve, to rise from your ashes. John felt a deep, almost overwhelming sense of responsibility. This wasn't just about saving Earth. This wasn't just about survival. It was about choosing what kind of people humanity would become. They could adapt, evolve, and rise to the challenge, or they could resist and be consumed by the changes. The figure moved closer, its form shimmering as it stepped forward. A hand, if it could even be called that, extended toward John. Its energy was tangible, a pressure that seemed to press against his chest, urging him to make the choice. But what choice was there? Could they really evolve? Could humanity really adapt to this new world? Or would they remain tied to the past, stubbornly resisting the changes that were already upon them? Lynn's voice broke the silence, her words a mix of awe and dread. The sphere, it's not just manipulating the environment. It's changing the very fabric of reality. Time, space, even the laws of nature, they're all in flux. Her discovery sent ripples of fear through the group. If the changes weren't just physical, if they were affecting reality itself, how could they possibly stand against them? How could they fight something that could alter the very rules they had taken for granted? But John didn't falter. "We have no choice but to rise to the challenge," he said firmly. "We can't fight it, we have to adapt." And with those words, the air shifted again, and the figure seemed to react. It pulsed with an energy that washed over them all, a deep, resonant hum that filled the air like the sound of 1,000 voices. The ground began to tremble, but this time, it wasn't a threat. It was a call, one that urged them forward, into the unknown. As the team moved forward, the world around them began to change. The jungle, once so alien and strange, seemed to open up, revealing glimpses of a new world, a world where the rules of nature no longer applied in the way they had once known. Humanity, it seemed, was standing at the edge of something profound. The changes were not just a curse. They were an invitation. An invitation to evolve. The figure led them forward, guiding them toward an unknown future. John, now more certain than ever, knew that the fate of humanity rested not in resisting the changes, but in embracing them. Only by evolving could they hope to survive. But the journey was far from over. Twist, as they reached the center of this transformed world, John and his team stood at the precipice of an impossible choice, to accept the evolution that the figure offered, or to remain locked in the past, bound by the old rules. Would they evolve, or would they fall?